The officer, a broad-shouldered man named Elias with a name tag glinting under the harsh lights, met Martin's gaze for the first time not with suspicion, but with something softer, almost like recognition. Elias was in his late 20s, his dark curls cropped close to his scalp, his uniform straining slightly against the muscles earned from years of gym sessions in Tacoma's foggy mornings. He had seen thousands of faces pass through this checkpoint, harried parents, suited executives, wide-eyed tourists. But Martin's eyes, those hazel depths flecked with gold like autumn leaves caught in Seattle's perpetual drizzle, held him in place. "Routine check," Elias said, his voice low, almost apologetic, as if he sensed the invisible armor Martin wore. The scanner had flagged something anomalous, a density in the chest area that protocols demanded they investigate, but Elias's touch was careful, professional yet hesitant, lingering just a fraction too long on the binder's edge hidden under fabric. Martin swallowed hard, the airport's air thick with the scent of stale coffee and recycled oxygen, his mind racing back to the clinic in Eugene where he'd undergone top surgery 2 years prior. The relief of finally aligning body with soul overshadowed now by this sterile intrusion. He was heading to New York for a gallery opening, his first solo exhibit of charcoal drawings that captured the raw ache of transition, the quiet rebellions of small-town Oregon boys dreaming under vast, indifferent skies. The envelope in his pocket held acceptance letters from residencies, proof that his art was more than survival. It was a bridge to something lasting. But here, under Elias's steady hands, it all felt fragile, exposed. "Everything all right?" Elias asked, stepping back slightly, his brown eyes searching Martin's face. There was no malice there, just the weariness of a job that stripped dignity from strangers daily. Elias had come out in the force 2 years ago, after a brutal shift where he'd pulled a sobbing kid from a bathroom stall at a pride rally turned riot. The department had been supportive on paper, but the whispers lingered, the sidelong glances in the locker room. He recognized the flicker in Martin's posture, the guarded poise of someone who'd fought for every inch of their reflection. "Yeah," Martin replied, his voice steady despite the tremor in his chest. He adjusted his jacket, the leather soft from years of wear, bought secondhand in a Portland thrift shop where the owner, a grizzled queer vet named Harlan, had slipped him a discount with a knowing wink. Just personal stuff. The line of passengers behind him shuffled impatiently, phones buzzing with delayed flight alerts, but in this bubble of scrutiny, time stretched like taffy. Elias nodded, glancing at the scanner readout. The anomaly was benign, a combination of the binder and a forgotten keychain clipped inside his shirt, a silver trans pride flag pendant from his sister Riley in Boise. But protocol required a private room for further checks, a sterile box with a table, 2 chairs, and a one-way mirror that always made Elias feel like he was auditioning for his own life. "This way," he said, gesturing with a gloved hand. Martin followed, his boots scuffing softly on the linoleum, each step echoing the rhythm of his pulse. Inside the room, the door clicked shut, sealing them in a pocket of fluorescent isolation. Elias peeled off his gloves, a small rebellion against the rules, and offered Martin a bottle of water from a mini-fridge humming in the corner. "You look like you could use it." "Long flight." His tone shifted, casual now, the uniform's authority loosening like a tie after hours. "Cross-country," Martin said, accepting the water with a nod, their fingers brushing in a spark that neither acknowledged but both felt. He twisted the cap, the plastic crinkling under his grip, and took a sip, the coolness grounding him. "Showing my work in Brooklyn. Drawings, mostly. People. Stories on paper." Elias leaned against the table, arms crossed, the fabric of his shirt pulling taut. "Art, huh? My brother's into that. Paints these wild abstracts in his garage in Everett. Says it keeps the demons at bay." He paused, eyes dropping to the scanner printout. "Look, the flagger's nothing. Keychain or whatever. But if it's medical, we can note it, speed things up next time." Martin's breath caught. The pendant, his talisman, engraved with Riley's initials on the back, a gift after his first hormone shot. Yeah, medical. Chest binder. Transition stuff." The words hung there, simple yet seismic, the first crack in the wall he'd built since leaving Montana's endless wheat fields at 18, fleeing a family that loved him in silences too heavy to break. Elias's expression softened further, a quiet unfolding. "Got it. No need to explain." But he did understand, more than protocol allowed. Last summer, at a dimly lit bar in Capitol Hill, he'd met Javier, a trans artist from LA whose sketches of urban solitude had mirrored Elias's own hidden sketches in a notebook he kept locked in his truck. Their nights had been electric, bodies mapping new territories, but Javier had ghosted after a week, leaving Elias with sketches crumpled in the trash and a heart schooled in caution. "You're good to go," he added, stamping the clearance form. "Safe travels, Martin." As Martin gathered his things, the envelope crinkling against his ribs, he glanced up. "Thanks, Elias." 4. Not making it weird. Their eyes locked again, hazel meeting brown, a current humming beneath the surface like the airport's underbelly of conveyor belts and jet fuel. Outside, the terminal swallowed him back into its chaos, but Martin's steps felt lighter, the encounter a brief oasis in the desert of transit. He texted Riley, "Cleared security. Met a guy who gets it. New York bound." Her reply buzzed instantly, "Spill later." "Proud of you, bro." He smiled, boarding pass in hand, unaware that the real turbulence lay not in the skies ahead, but in the man he'd just left behind, whose shift ended in 2 hours with a decision that would pull them both into a storm. The flight to New York was a blur of recycled air and in-flight movies. Martin's sketchbook open on his tray table, charcoal smudging his fingers as he drew Elias from memory, the curl of his lashes, the way his smile tugged unevenly, like he'd learned it late. By the time wheels touched down at JFK, the city lights sprawling like a glittering promise, Martin felt the pull of possibility. His hotel in Bushwick was a converted warehouse loft, walls scarred with graffiti ghosts, the kind of place where artists crashed like waves against concrete shores. Check-in was quick. The clerk, a non-binary barista type with neon blue hair and a tattoo of Audre Lorde on their forearm. That night, the gallery opening thrummed with bodies and bass lines, wine glasses clinking like secrets shared. Martin's pieces hung under spotlights, a series called Thresholds, figures caught mid-transformation, ink bleeding into watercolor skies over American heartlands. Critics murmured, collectors circled, but Martin's eyes scanned the crowd for faces that echoed home. That's when he saw him, Elias, impossibly, in a crisp white shirt untucked over jeans, nursing a beer by the exposed brick wall. "You followed me," Martin half-joked, heart slamming as he approached, the air between them charged like pre-storm static. Elias grinned, sheepish. "Off-duty PTO. Saw your exhibit promo on Instagram. Turns out security checks come with perks like stalking talent." It was a lie, mostly. He'd searched Martin's name after his shift, the drawings pulling him like gravity, a compulsion born of that room's intimacy. They talked until the crowd thinned, words weaving through art and airports, Elias revealing his own sketches hidden in desk drawers, dreams deferred for the steady batch. By midnight, they spilled onto the street, Brooklyn's autumn chill nipping at their heels, streetlights haloing steam from manhole covers. A kiss happened under a bodega awning, tentative then fierce, Martin's hands in Elias's curls, Elias's palms warm on his binder-free chest, scars kissed like constellations. Back in the loft, sheets tangled and breaths mingled, they mapped each other slowly, whispers of beautiful and here, erasing miles. Martin traced the tattoo on Elias's ribcage, a compass rose inked after Javier, pointing nowhere and everywhere. "What's north for you?" he murmured, post-climax haze softening edges. "You," Elias replied, simple as breath, but in his chest, doubt flickered. Javier's ghost, the job's demands, the distance yawning between coasts. Weeks blurred into calls and visits, Elias flying standby, Martin sketching Elias's profile against Seattle's Space Needle. But cracks formed. Elias's ex, Theo, a fellow officer with a grudge and shared history, started texting veiled threats after spotting Elias's phone lock screen. "He's using you," Theo messaged, attaching old photos of Javier, lies twisted into knives. Martin, deep in a Vermont residency amid maple groves turning crimson, ignored the unease, focusing on canvas and Elias's voice on late-night Zooms. Until one snowy evening, Elias's call came stuttered. "I need to tell you something. Theo, he knows about us. And there's this promotion. Staying in Seattle means everything I've worked for." The betrayal stung not in words but silence, Elias choosing silence over fight, the envelope of Martin's dreams now crumpled in a drawer. Heart splintered, Martin hung up, snow muffling his sobs, the healing a solitary path through white drifts. Vermont's winters wrapped Martin in a hush of snow-laden pines, The residency cabin, a sanctuary of warped floorboards and a wood stove that crackled like hesitant confessions. He arrived with 2 suitcases, one for clothes, the other for canvases, and a heart raw from Elias's half-spoken goodbye. The promotion in Seattle, a ladder he climbed alone, leaving Martin dangling on the rung below. Days blurred into sketches of fractured horizons, charcoal figures reaching across blank expanses, their hands dissolving into fog. Riley called from Boise, her voice a lifeline through the static. "He's an idiot if he lets you go, Marty. But you're not defined by his choices." She was right, of course. At 32, Martin had rebuilt himself from the dust of Miles City, Montana, where high school hallways echoed with slurs and his father's Bible thumped like judgment. Transition had been his rebellion, quiet and fierce, hormones bought online before insurance bent, surgery funded by odd jobs bartending in Portland's Divey Pearl district. The residency director, Lena, a wiry sculptor from Burlington with silver streaks in her bob and hands perpetually dusted in clay, noticed the shadows under Martin's eyes. Over communal dinners of venison stew and kale from the greenhouse, she shared stories of her own losses, a partner lost to cancer, art as the only resurrection. "Pain's the best pigment," she said one night, passing a flask of maple whiskey warmed by the fire. "It bleeds true." Martin nodded, his latest piece taking shape. A trans man silhouetted against a stormy Montana sky, chest open like a wound, revealing not emptiness but a galaxy of stars. Elias's eyes reflected their unwitting muse. Meanwhile, in Seattle, Elias threw himself into the promotions grind, leading training sessions on de-escalation, his voice steady as he lectured rookies on empathy and checkpoints. But nights hollowed him, the apartment in Capitol Hill echoing with ghosts. Javier's laugh in the walls, Martin's scent lingering on a forgotten hoodie. Theo's texts escalated, from snide jabs to outright sabotage. Anonymous tips to HR about Elias's distractions, whispers in the break room painting him as unreliable. Elias confronted him in the parking garage one rain-slicked dusk, fists clenched but voices low. "This ends, Theo. We're done, years ago and now." Theo's laugh was bitter, eyes narrowed under the sodium lamps. "You think you're over it? Chasing coasts for a guy who'll bolt when it gets real? I saw the logs. You pulled his file after that check. Obsessed much?" The truth landed like a punch. Elias had accessed the database, a minor breach born of curiosity, Martin's exhibit details blooming like forbidden flowers. Guilt gnawed, but so did longing. He booked a ticket to Vermont on impulse, the flight a red eye through turbulence that mirrored his gut. Martin was at the easel when the knock came, snow swirling outside the frost-laced window. Elias stood there, drenched parka shedding flakes, face etched with apology. "I couldn't not come," he said, words tumbling as Martin pulled him inside, the door shutting out the world. They thawed by the stove, hands rediscovering paths, kisses tasting of whiskey and want. Elias confessed the promotion's trap, loyalty to the badge clashing with love's pull, Theo's poison seeping into cracks. "I choose you," he vowed, fingers tracing Martin's scars, each ridge a testament to endurance. "If you'll have me." Nights deepened their bond, bodies entwined under quilts stitched by Lena's grandmother, whispers weaving futures. Elias transferring east, Martin inviting him to Brooklyn openings. But dawn brought reality's chill. Elias's phone buzzed with a sergeant's urgent text. A shift crisis, Theo stirring trouble, demanding return. "One more day," Elias pleaded, but Martin saw the fracture, the job siren call stronger than promises. He let Elias go with a sketch. Their profiles merged against airport glass, eyes meeting across divides. Alone again, Martin poured the ache into exile. A mural-scale work of a man walking endless runways, shadows of lovers trailing like contrails. Lena sold it to a collector in Chicago, the check funding a trip west, not to reclaim, but to confront. Portland welcomed him with April rains, the city a mosaic of breweries and bookshops, Hawthorne Boulevard blooming with dogwood. He met Riley Furfo at a hole-in-the-wall on Division, her toddler nephew gurgling in a high chair, oblivious to adult tempests. "Go see him," she urged, slurping noodles. "Closure's a gift you give yourself." Martin nodded, heart a drumbeat, and drove to Tacoma, the sound's gray waters mirroring his mood. Elias's precinct loomed like a fortress, but he waited outside, leaning on his truck, curls windswept. The reunion was raw. No kisses, just truth spilled under overcast skies. "Theo outed me to the captain," Elias admitted, voice cracking. Twisted it like I'm a risk. I fought, but it's my life here. Betrayal's echo resounded, not from Elias, but the system's indifference, the queer tax on ambition. Martin reached for his hand, calluses from charcoal meeting calluses from holsters. Then build one there, with me in it. They drove to Elias's apartment, walls lined with his sketches, urban vignettes of Seattle's underbelly, a hidden talent blooming in secrecy. That night, they loved without promises, bodies a temporary harbor, dawn finding them tangled and tear-streaked. But crisis brewed. Theo, drunk and desperate, crashed the after-hours bar where officers unwound, slurring accusations, outing Elias to the room in a haze of spilled beer. Videos hit group chats by morning, the precinct fracturing into allies and whispers. Elias tendered notice that week, the betrayal a catalyst, but not before a final wound. Learning Theo had tampered with Martin's security file years back, flagging it falsely during a routine visit, a grudge from overhearing Elias's post-Javier ramblings. Rage and grief collided in Martin as he flew home. Elias's text a barrage. I'm coming. Wait. New York's summer sweltered, the loft a sauna of unresolved heat. Martin's next series, Betrayals, exploding onto canvas. Figures betrayed by shadows, lovers turning to thorns. Brooklyn's heat wave clung like a fever dream, the loft's ceiling fan whirring futilely against the humidity that turned Martin's sketches to damp smears. He worked through nights, charcoal dust coating his skin like war paint, each stroke exorcising the venom of Theo's sabotage, a digital scar in federal records that had flagged Martin for extra scrutiny at every airport since his early travels, a silent harassment born of Elias's past indiscretions. The revelation had come via a FOIA request Martin filed in a haze of hurt, the documents arriving like indictments, pages stamped with Elias's precinct code. Trust, that fragile architecture, teetered on beams of what-ifs. Elias arrived unannounced on a Thursday, duffel slung over his shoulder, the Amtrak from Seattle leaving him hollow-eyed and stubbled. He knocked with the rhythm of their first song, a half-remembered indie track from the gallery night, and Martin opened the door, the air between them thick with unsaid indictments. I didn't know, Elias started, voice rough from disuse, stepping inside to the scent of turpentine and takeout Thai. The loft was a chaos of half-finished works, a triptych of security wands piercing translucent skins, revelations spilling like blood. Martin poured coffee, black and scalding, handing Elias a mug with steady hands that belied the storm inside. You didn't know Theo was that deep in your shit? Or that your brother in blue bullshit enabled it? The words cut, honed on Montana's flinty silences, where his father's tough love had masked indifference to his unfolding truth. Elias sank onto the sagging couch, elbows on knees, the mug steaming between palms that had once steadied Martin's waist. Both. God, both. After Javier, Theo was there. Picked up pieces, or so I thought. But it was control, always. He looked up, brown eyes raw, the compass tattoo peeking from his Henley like a taunt. I quit. Last week. Handed in the badge, the gun, everything. For this. For us. The admission hung, a lifeline tossed into churning waters. Martin paced, floorboards creaking under socked feet, the city hum filtering through fire escape grates. Honks, laughter, a distant siren wailing like lost love. He stopped, kneeling before Elias, hands framing his face, thumbs brushing stubble. Then prove it. No more halves. Their kiss was desperate, a reclaiming, clothes shedding like old skins, bodies colliding on the rug amid scattered pencils. Elias mapped Martin's scars with lips and tongue, murmuring litanies of mine and sorry, while Martin gripped curls, anchoring against waves of doubt. Mornings after were tentative bridges. Elias job hunting via laptop, resumes tailored to private security in the arts, galleries, events. His steady gaze a bomb as Martin prepped for a Chicago show. They cooked together, Elias's Tacoma-bred clam chowder mingling with Martin's Portland vegan twists, laughter bubbling over spilled garlic. But shadows lingered. Theo's final strike came via email to Elias's personal account, leaked residency details of Martin's Vermont stay, twisted into proof of instability for some imagined custody battle. Theo grasping at straws, projecting his unraveling. Fury propelled Elias to a payphone in Prospect Park, dialing Theo under dogwood shade, voice steel. Cross him again, and it's charges. Harassment, Tampering, I've got logs. Theo's slur was defeated, a whimper. Just wanted you back, man. Family. But family, Elias knew now, was chosen, not blood or badge. Healing threaded through small rituals. Weekend hikes in the Palisades. Elias sketching birds while Martin drew their intertwined hands. Therapy sessions in a village walk-up, where a soft-spoken counselor named Amir unpacked Elias's abandonment scripts, Martin's imposter syndromes. Amir, a gay dad from Queens with a hijab-wearing wife and adopted twins, wove humanism into sessions. Love isn't erasure, it's witness. Yet climax brewed in autumn's turning. Martin's Chicago exhibit veils, drawing crowds to a river north space. Walls alive with layered portraits. Trans figures unveiling layers. Security motifs morphing into embraces. Elias flew with him, nerves jangling like loose change, the windy city's gales whipping their scarves. Opening night glittered. Critics from the Tribune praising the visceral intimacy. Collectors from Milwaukee bidding fiercely. But midway, a face from the crowd. Theo, uninvited, suit rumpled, eyes wild with bourbon breath. You think this erases it? Theo hissed at Elias in a shadowed alcove. Gallery murmurs a distant roar. Dragging him into your mess? I did you a favor. Kept you safe from freaks. The slur landed like a slap. Martin's approach silent until he stepped between, voice calm as prairie wind. We're done being your collateral, Theo. Walk away, or we call it in. Theo lunged, fists swinging wild, but Elias sidestepped. Years of training a reflex, pinning him against velvet-draped wall without harm. Security, ironic, swarmed, escorting Theo out amid gasps. The incident a ripple turning to wave. News trickled. Theo's suspension, therapy mandated. A man crumbling under unexamined hate. In their hotel room overlooking the Chicago River, lights dancing on dark waters, Martin and Elias collapsed, adrenaline ebbing to tears. I almost lost you there, Elias whispered, holding Martin close, hearts sinking like metronomes. You didn't, Martin replied, fingers in curls. We're the story now, not the stop, the shock. Dawn broke gold, promising mending, but the journey's curve held one more bend. Back in Brooklyn, winter's grip tightened, snow blanketing the boroughs like forgiveness. Elias landed a gig at the Met, screening visitors with a smile that disarmed, his sketches gaining quiet notice in zine circles. Martin's work sold steadily, a commission from a Seattle foundation pulling them west for spring. But crisis crested in a doctor's call. Martin's hormone levels off, a lump flagged on routine scan. Benign, likely, but biopsy scheduled, fears cold finger-tracing spine. Elias held vigil in the sterile wait, hand in Martin's, whispering of futures. A house in the Hudson Valley, collabs on graphic novels blending their lines. Results came clean, relief a sob shared over diner pancakes, but the scare etched deeper commitment. We're unbreakable, Elias vowed, and Martin believed, the airport's echo fading to memory. Spring unfurled in the Hudson Valley like a hesitant truce, dogwoods blushing pink against the river's lazy bend. Martin's new commission a mural for a Poughkeepsie Community Center, portraits of local queer elders, their stories etched in oils, faces weathered by Stonewall echoes and farmstead secrets. Elias tagged along, his Met shifts traded for freelance consulting, the pair renting a creaky Victorian on a hill overlooking the Catskills, attic studio smelling of pine resin and fresh paint. Mornings began with coffee on the porch swing, Elias's head on Martin's shoulder, the world a quilt of green hills and distant train whistles. This is North, Elias murmured one dawn, lips brushing Martin's temple, the compass tattoo a vow inked deeper. But peace, that elusive guest, slipped through cracks widened by old wounds. Theo's shadow lingered in court-mandated emails, apologies couched in legalese, his therapy logs shared as olive branches, but laced with pleas for Elias's forgiveness as family. Elias deleted them unread, but doubt seated, a nightmare of badges and betrayals, waking sweat-soaked, Martin's arms anchor. He's poison, Martin soothed, tracing jawlines in the moonlight filtering through lace curtains. Yet privately, Martin wrestled envy, not of Theo, but the ease of cis bonds, the unexamined privileges Elias still carried, however unwittingly. The commission demanded travel, interviews in Kingston's historic homes, elders like Miriam, a lesbian farmer in her 80s with calloused hands and tales of 70s barn dances, or Carlos, a trans veteran from Beacon whose Navy discharge papers yellowed in a drawer. Their resilience fueled Martin's brush, but one afternoon, in a Rhinebeck cafe buzzing with weekenders, a call from Riley shattered the idyll. "Dad's sick, Marty. Pancreatic. Months, maybe." The words landed like frost on Bloom, Montana's pull inexorable. Martin flew home alone, Elias grounded by a client meeting, the red eye to Billings a tunnel of grief. Miles City greeted him with Chinook winds bending wheat, the family ranch a sprawl of weathered barns, and his father's recliner by the TV, gaunt frames swallowed by flannel. Tom Whitaker, stubborn, silent Tom, extended a hand, rough as sandpaper, eyes blue as faded denim meeting Hazel without flinching. "Heard about the art." He grunted over pot roast, Riley translating silences into substance. "Proud son." The word son, long withheld, cracked something foundational, tears salting the meal. Elias joined days later, navigating the ranch's dust roads in rental jeans, his city polish clashing with barbed wire. Tom sized him up over coffee, gruff questions probing. "Seattle boy, eh? What do you do besides chase my kid?" Elias met the gaze, voice even. "Love him, sir. That's the job." Evenings by the fire, stories emerged. Tom's own hidden youth, a college fling with a ranch hand in the 60s, buried under societal shovels. "Didn't have your courage," he admitted to Martin one dusk, hands trembling on a photo album. "But I see it now." Healing's arc bent toward release. Tom's decline quickened, hospice in the guest room, Riley's kids' laughter a counterpoint to beeps. Elias cooked, his chowder a comfort, while Martin sketched bedside portraits, capturing Tom's wry smile, the lines of regret softening. On a July night, thunder rumbling over plains, Tom passed quietly, hand in Martin's, Elias at the door like sentinel. Funeral was simple, Dirt Road Baptist Church, eulogies from cousins who once whispered, now nodding respect. Martin scattered ashes in the creek where he'd fished as a girl, then boy, the water carrying forward. Grief's weight pulled them east, but not unbroken. Elias's freelance dried up midsummer, rejections piling like unanswered prayers, whispers of overqualified, masking bias against his queerness, the badge's ghost. "Am I enough without it?" he confessed one rainy evening in the Victorian, rain-pattering tin roof. Martin pulled him close, bodies aligning on the braided rug. "You're everything with it gone." Autumn brought Climax's shadow. Theo, paroled from suspension, surfaced at a pride event in Albany, sober but seething, cornering Elias by the beer tent. "You threw it all for him?" Pathetic. Words escalated to shoves, bystanders filming, the scuffle spilling into headlines. Ex-cop assaults at festival. Elias pressed charges this time. No mercy, the betrayal's full circle closing with cuffs clicking on Theo's wrists. Court in Poughkeepsie was a gauntlet, Martin's testimony steady. "He targeted us because we loved freely. That's the crime." Elias's followed, voice cracking on Javier's name. The web of hurts untangled for judge and jury. Verdict: restraining order, community service. Theo's eyes downcast as he exited, a man diminished. Winter solstice found them in the attic, strings of lights casting gold on the mural's completion, elders encircling a young couple, hands linked across generations. Elias proposed not with rings, but sketches, two figures, horizons merged, forever, inked below. Martin said yes with a kiss, tears salting skin, the valley's quiet a benediction. Yet crisis lingered in subtext. Martin's biopsy echo prompted full checks, Doc's flagging family history, Tom's illness a genetic whisper. Clean scans again, but fear's residue deepened resolve, their love a bulwark. The Hudson Valley's first frost-etched fractals on the Victorian's panes, turning the world to crystal prisms that caught the low winter sun, casting rainbows across the kitchen table where Martin and Elias pored over wedding invites. Simple letterpress cards, embossed with intertwined charcoal lines. No frills for a ceremony in the community center's garden come spring. Elias's sketches had evolved, no longer hidden, but shared in local open mics, his voice narrating tales of checkpoints and heart checks to nodding crowds in New Paltz cafes. "Art's my badge now," he'd say, hand in Martin's, the words a mantra against rejections that still stung like salt in old wounds. But spring's thaw unearthed buried roots. Riley's visit from Boise brought news of the ranch's sale, proceeds split 3 ways, her stability, Martin's art fund, and a surprise bequest to Elias from Tom's will, a faded envelope with "For the boy who stayed" scrawled in shaky script. Inside, a check and a letter. Tom's halting admission of past failures, pride in the man who'd held his son through storms. Elias wept over it in the orchard, apple blossoms drifting like confetti, Martin holding him as sobs shook broad shoulders. "He saw me," Elias whispered, "the gift a bridge over Montana's chasms." Wedding planning wove normalcy. Tastings at farm-to-table spots in Cold Spring, Elias vetoing salmon for vegan tacos, laughter echoing over Hudson sunsets. Vows drafted in the attic, Martin's words a poem of thresholds crossed, Elias's a promise of steady hands. Guests listed: Lena from Vermont, Amir the therapist, Harlan the Portland thrift vet, even a tentative invite to Theo's sister, a neutral olive branch through immense circles. Climax crested unbidden in May, rehearsals under dogwood canopies, the garden alive with peonies and string lights. A courier arrived mid-dance. Legal papers from Seattle, Theo's countersuit alleging defamation, claiming Elias's testimony twisted truths, dragging Javier's graveled history into depositions. The suit was baseless, Spite's last gasp, but it halted proceedings, shadows over petals. "He won't stop," Elias raged that night. Pacing the loft they'd sublet in Beacon, fists clenched. Martin pulled him down, bodies a tangle of fury and fear, love's friction sparking desperate unions. "We fight together," Martin vowed, hazel eyes fierce. Lawyers in Albany offices, stuffy with leather and precedent, dismantled Theo's claims. Emails, videos, witness affidavits stacking like bricks in a wall of evidence. Elias testified again, voice honed. "Betrayal isn't love's opposite, it's fear's child." Theo, across the aisle, looked smaller, therapy's work etching lines of regret, but his lawyer's spin painted victimhood. Verdict favored them, suit dismissed with sanctions, Theo ordered to deeper rehab, the courtroom's gavel a punctuation on cycles. Relief bloomed into ceremony. June solstice, garden transformed, elders from the mural flanking aisles of wildflowers. Riley walked Martin down a petal path, her arm steady, nephew scattering seeds instead of rice. Elias waited under an arch of woven vines, brown eyes brimming, curls tamed for once. Vows exchanged with rings, simple titanium bands engraved with compass points, sealed with a kiss that drew cheers, the Hudson's breeze carrying toasts. Reception spilled into twilight, tacos devoured, Harlan's speech a roast on thrift shop romances, Lena's a tearful ode to resilience. Honeymoon was a road trip west, retracing Martin's scars. Montana creeks for ashes echoes, Portland dives for rebirth toasts, Seattle's waterfront for Elias's surrender. In a Tacoma motel, they burned Theo's papers in a tin ashtray, flames devouring lies, renewal's pyre. "Shocked the world once," Elias joked, nodding to the airport tale. "Now we shock ourselves, with happy." Return brought domestic rhythms. The Victorian There's Now, mortgage co-signed, mornings of shared sketches, Elias's zine launch in Rhinebeck drawing crowds. Martin's next show, Unveiled Unions, toured Midwest galleries, pieces of their story abstracted, security wands as wedding arches, scars as invitations. Crisis's whisper came in fallow fields. Elias's fertility questions surfaced in quiet talks, post-wedding glow dimming to what-ifs. "Kids?" he broached over harvest stew, spoon-pausing. Martin, stirring memories of Riley's boy, nodded. "Surrogacy, adoption, whatever fits." Consults in NYC clinics, options mapped like artboards, but a scare, Elias's routine check flagging a benign cyst, echoes of Martin's fears, tested bonds. Holding vigil in sterile halls, hands clasped, they recommitted. Families us first. Thanksgiving gathered kin, Riley's clan in the dining room, Tom's photos on mantle, stories swapping like recipes. Laughter healed, but night's end found Martin sketching Elias asleep, lines of peace etching deeper love. Autumn's palette deepened in the Hudson Valley, leaves carpeting the Victorian's yard in crimson and gold, Martin's studio a flurry of commissions, a book cover for a queer memoir from a Boston press, portraits for a Hudson nonprofit aiding trans youth. Elias's zine evolved into a podcast, Checkpoint Hearts, episodes blending his security yarns with guest artists' tales, recorded in the attic amid microphone static and cat paws patting floorboards. Their adopted tabby, Scout, rescued from a Poughkeepsie alley, curled between them on evenings, purring counterpoint to vinyl spins of old soul records. Otis Redding crooning losses turned to longings. Domesticity's warmth masked undercurrents. Elias's podcast gained traction, invites to queer-lit fests in Provincetown, but trolls surfaced. Anonymous posts dredging the airport incident, twisting Martin's transition into spectacle, Theo's shadow in meme form. They're saying I faked it for attention. Martin vented one crisp morning, scrolling feeds over oatmeal, jaw tight. Elias closed the laptop, pulling him onto the porch swing. Let them. Our story's ours. But doubt not Elias privately. Had his breach, that impulsive file peak, seeded the scrutiny? Guilt's vine twisted, prompting a solo drive to Albany for a men's group, sharing circles where ex-cops unpacked badges' burdens. Winter holidays approached with logistical grace. Christmas in Boise with Riley, her home strung with lights, toddler unwrapping trans flag puzzles Martin carved. Tom's absence ached, but his letter framed on the mantel bridged gaps, Elias reading it aloud by tree glow, voice thick. New Year's in the city, Times Square's ball drop a metaphor for releases, their kiss amid confetti crowds, a vow renewed. Spring 2026 bloomed, crises anew. Martin's book cover gig expanded to illustrations, deadlines pressing like storm fronts, sleep fractured by all-nighters. Elias supported with meals and massages, but tension simmered. A Provincetown panel clashing with Martin's Chicago follow-up, distances old foe rearing. Go, Martin urged over FaceTime, sketchpad balanced on knees. I'll hold the fort. Elias flew, but midway, a call. Scout sick, lethargic, vet rush. Martin handled alone. Elias's flight turning back midair, hard in throat. The scare passed. Kittens, worms, treatable, but it cracked facades. Elias landed to Martin's exhaustion, words sharp. I needed you. Embrace followed argument. Bodies reconciling on the kitchen floor, tears mingling with moans. We're a team. Elias panted, post-climax clarity. Therapy with Amir resumed. Sessions unpacking partnerships labors. Love not effortless, but earned. Summer's heat wave tested further. Elias's podcast hit a milestone. Sponsor from a trans health org, but backlash peaked. Theo, out of rehab, penning an op-ed in a Seattle alt weekly. Redeemed or ruined? Veiled barbs at Elias's abandonment. Comments erupted, doxing attempts on their address, fear-locking doors. Martin rallied. We go public. A joint essay in a Brooklyn queer mag, from stop to start, chronicled the airport hook to healing, vulnerabilities power disarming trolls, shares surging support. Climax unfolded at a Hudson Pride March, rain-slicked streets thrumming with banners and bass. They marched hand in hand, Elias mic'd for a live pod episode, voices amplifying stories mid-stride. Then, confrontation, Theo at the sidelines, sign of faux apology, eyes pleading. I was wrong, he called, voice cracking over chants. Elias paused, Martin squeezing hand, forgive or fortify. Words exchanged, brief. Heal yourself first. Theo nodded, turning away, a chapter's close. Fall brought bounty. Martin's illustrations lauded, a Vermont retrospective booked, Elias's pod syndicating nationally. Family planning advanced, adoption profiles submitted, dreams of a nursery in the attic. But emotional nadir struck in October, Martin's routine skin flagging again. Not cancer, but hormone adjustments needed, transitions ongoing dialogue with body. Elias held the fort, research rabbit holing into support groups, their bed a haven of adjustments and affirmations. Thanksgiving echoed last year's grace, expanded, a foster kid from the nonprofit, testing waters, joining the table with shy smiles. Laughter layered healings, the valley's mists lifting to clearer skies. Winter's hush blanketed the Hudson Valley once more, the Victorian aglow with solstice lights, Martin's retrospective in Burlington a capstone, galleries filled with thresholds, evolutions, visitors tracing scars and pigment, whispers of inspiring, weaving through snow-dusted halls. Elias emceed the opening, his podcast voice warm, introducing pieces with anecdotes, the airport wand as muse, Theo's thorns as fertilizer. Back home, they hosted a Yule log burn, flames devouring written regrets, Elias's badge guilts, Martin's imposter echoes, sparks rising like freed prayers. New Year dawned with domestic deaths. Adoption match came tentative. A sibling pair from NYC foster care, Jamal and Sophia, ages 8 and 6, wide-eyed at the ranchette's expanse. Home studies passed, paperwork oceans navigated, Elias's steady hands building bunk beds. Martin's sketches decorating walls with adventure maps. First visit chaotic. Jamal's wary questions on why no mom. Sophia's hugs fierce as vines. Family's shapes vary. Elias explained over Coco, Martin's arm around him. The words a legacy from Tom's letter. Spring's renewal mirrored theirs. The kids placed officially. Court finality a joy laced with their histories. Jamal's bio dad incarcerated. Sophia's mom lost to opioids, but resilience budding like crocuses. Weekends taught fishing in the creek. Elias's casts patient. Martin's stories of Montana boys bridging gaps. Challenges crested. Nightmares jolting nights. Schoolyard taunts echoing old slurs. Therapy a weekly pilgrimage with Amir's family practice. Climax's gentle wave. A family trip to Seattle. Closing circles. Elias showing the kids his old precinct. Now a community hub. Theo a volunteer there. Nods exchanged at a distance. Redemption's quiet work. Airport revisit for Martin voluntary. Secondary screen a nod from a new officer. Elias's hand in his. Laughter bubbling. No shocks today. Javier's grave visited. Flowers laid. Elias's closure a whisper to wind. Summer solstice marked 2 years wed. Anniversary hike in the Catskills. Kids trailing with packs. Summit picnic of tacos and tails. Elias pulled Martin aside at peak. Rings glinting in sun. Shocked myself loving this hard. Kiss sealed. Panoramic views a testament. Autumn deepened bonds. Martin's graphic novel collab with Elias launched. Runways to Roots. Illustrated dual narrative of their arcs. Bestseller in indie charts. Readings drawing crowds from Oregon farms to Chicago lofts. Kids thrived. Jamal's drawings echoing Martin's. Sophia's songs Elias's pod. Winter's End brought profound hush. Tom's anniversary. Ashes mingled in Hudson waters. Family boat ride under ice flow stars. Martin spoke to ripples. You taught endurance. Elias added, kids chorusing, love's chorus. Life's tapestry wove on. Betrayals to blessings, stops to starts. Humanity's core and chosen kin, scars as stars guiding home. In the Victorians' warmth, they built, unbreakable.